everyone, Larry Chen here. Welcome to another episode of Hoonigan Autofocus. Today, we're focusing on Michael Essa, and this is his shop with all of these awesome race cars here.
Yep. How you guys doing?
How are you?
Good, good. So yeah, welcome to my shop. Everybody knows this car, obviously, who follows FD.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this, but I also wanted to talk about BMWs in general, and I guess a little bit of our history. You know, I've been photographing you for, I think, about 10 years now.
Yep.
Right? When did you start in FD?
First year was 2009. So yeah, 12 years now.
So 12 years now. The interesting thing now, if you were just to start watching Formula Drift now, specifically Pro 2, you would think that it's a BMW series.
Yeah.
Right? And the thing is, it's not unusual for a European to look from the outside and see that, because in Europe, they didn't really have that many S chassis, S13, S14s, 350Zs. That's what we drifted here.
Yeah.
You know? But guess what? Now it's become Formula BMW, and you pretty much started it all.
Yeah. So my first year I ran, 2009, I ran an FC RX-7 with an LS1. And the year after that, I built an E92 with an S85 V10 with a sequential transmission. So just this crazy new BMW. And that car worked okay. That engine didn't make enough power.
And if I can make the note, not to, like, I guess, put the car down or anything, but it seemed like it made all the right noises and it looked cool, but it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, the thing made 440 horsepower and 330 foot-pounds of torque in an E92. And, nobody had that much power at the time, but pretty much everybody was in the 600 horsepower range, and we were in 400 horsepower. So the car was definitely not fast. And after that season, we kind of went back to the drawing board and said, all right, what are we going to do? Like twin turbos on this thing and just make this super expensive, complicated car, or change to something else? So we built a Z4 with an S54 turbo and made about 650 horsepower to the wheels, mild, ran that car for 2 years, and then built an E46 after that.
So why did you go from FC, which is like a normal US drift car,
Yeah.
especially V8 powered, why did you go from that to BMWs?
Well, at my shop, we do BMWs, Porsches, Mercedes. At the time, it was almost all Porsches, but they're not very good drift cars unless you spend a ton of money and maybe try to develop it. So BMW just made the most sense, being a European car, and they are really good cars. They're really well built. The chassis are great. So I knew that I could get that car out there and develop it. The Z4 was just too short of a wheelbase to be really competitive. It's really snappy and hard to drive, but basically driving that car trained me to be a better driver. So when I jumped in the E46, it just fit like a glove and everything fell in place.
So like when I first started shooting drifting in Europe, specifically like going to events like Gottville, the E30 is basically like the European S13. Yeah. Everybody started drifting on them because they were a dime a dozen. They're super cheap. They're special cars here, especially now, but in Europe, you could just get it like a junker one. You could rally it, you could drift it, you could build it up for whatever, and it was just so interesting to kind of see a different take on the sport that we love so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what's available. Like, obviously drifting started in Japan as far as the sport goes, and obviously they had Nissans and Toyotas and Mazdas over there, and that's what they used. And in Germany and Europe, there's a lot of European cars, and BMWs just tend to, they work the best, and they were inexpensive. And like you said, the E30 was just like, they just slide around stock, so you do some upgrades to them and they're just super easy and pretty reliable. BMW drivetrains are really good, so you could jump in that car and just beat on it all day long. So it just made sense.
So then you get in the E46, and how many years did you drive it until your first championship? It was 2013 where you won your championship.
Yep.
How many years development?
That was the first year in that car.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's been a blur, and a lot of people like to make fun of me. Like, it's like, I've been to over 100 Formula Drift events, you know?
Yeah.
I think you've been to, I don't even know how many now, right?
Every single one since 2009. So
Exactly. So it's a lot of them. But okay, so first year, debuted, obviously you kind of raised a lot of eyebrows, and hence why it's Formula BMW now. Formula D, and it's all of these E36, 46, 92s. And they look amazing. And it's so cool to see. I guess that's kind of like the up and coming thing, right? And then even in Pro 1, there's quite a few of you guys now.
yeah, there has been on and off. Like Chris Stapps has been in here with his E46 and then the E92, and then there's a couple E92s in Pro 2 and an F22 I think in Pro and in Pro 2, and then Dylan's got his E46. So yeah, I mean there's not as many as there are in Pro 2, but as those guys in Pro 2 start to move up to Pro, then the field's just going to get bigger and bigger and more filled with European cars.
Yeah, I think in Pro 2, it's pretty much all BMWs and then maybe like 5 Nissans and then one Toyota.
Yeah, it's easily half or more.
No, it's way more than half. I mean, I looked at it, because I'm interested in this kind of thing. I love seeing the trend of Formula Drift. Having followed it since 2006,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it's like, you kind of like to see where it's going. And the reason why we fell in love with this sport in the first place is because it's obtainable and it's relatable. These are actual street cars. They started as street cars.
There's a good story about this car. This car I bought for my mom about 5 years ago. It was a 330 automatic, transmission problems, electrical problems, and I eventually said, you know what, I got her a Honda Accord, got this car back from her and built it into what's now my competition car.
I think Dylan's car is the same thing. It used to be one of our buddies, Aaron Eusebi's, his mom's car.
Yep.
And that turned into his Pro 1 car. So this is a car that you've had years to develop, which, by the way, your old chassis is still competing. And also, I think your Z4 is still in use too, right?
So Dmitry Brutsky, who won the championship this year in my old E46 that I won the championship in. So now that car has a Pro and Pro 2 championship. And he bought my Z4 for me a couple years ago. And I told him, this car is hard to drive, but he wanted the Z4. He said, this is gonna teach you how to be a very good driver. It's a difficult car to drive. You have to stay on the throttle. There's no room for error. So he drove that car for 2 years, just like I did, and then bought my old E46 from me. And I gave him all the setup notes and helped him out at the track and did some coaching for him, and he won the championship.
Well, he went from 27th place in the Z4 to first.
Yep.
Which I think that might be the largest jump in Formula Drift history. I think
so.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know. Yeah, I can't think of anything close. Yeah. But it really goes to show how much easier this is to drive from the factory.
Yeah, I mean, S chassis are really easy to drive and they work really well. And I put that kind of, compare it to the BMW. The BMW has some benefits, but the S chassis just kind of works all around. And it's been such a good car for so long because so many people make parts for it. But now with the BMW, a lot of companies are coming on board and seeing that they're getting more popular and they're making more products for it. So, you've got different parts, different steering angle kits to choose from and rear suspension bits and all these different coilovers and, just a lot like body kits now.
Yeah, now, even to the point where now your title sponsors, FCP Euro, they are the ones basically supplying the US with all of these parts. I mean, they sell so much stuff, especially during this time. During the lockdown, what do? We work on our cars.
Yeah.
We're staying at home.
Exactly. All the projects that you wanted to do to your car and all the maintenance and stuff, everybody had time to do it. And they got, FCP is awesome because they have lifetime warranty on their stuff. So it's like a no-brainer to buy parts from them. And, people are real hardcore, like diehard fans of BMWs, and they'll have 250,000 mile, E46s that are still running. And they'll go through their brakes and all that kind of stuff and just keep swapping them out from FCP Euro and just, I don't understand how they make money doing it, but somehow they do, and saves people money and they can keep their car longer.
It's because of car guys like you who buy more cars.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. More
and I don't
projects.
drive it enough to break them.
And then pretty soon you're gonna have like 5 or 6 cars in your shop that you'll have to get parts for.
Exactly.
So that's what it works. That's how it works. All right. So let's talk about this. But before we talk about this, I wanted to give you one of these. You've been asking me. I think. Unfortunately, the season's already over, and I think you're gonna tear this down. But I think maybe it's one of those things where
I'm going to keep it.
Yeah, you keep
so
it.
That, when we
you
get
keep
a new
it
livery
for
on
next year.
Exactly.
And then I can hang out next to Cow Club Bill here.
Yeah,
I think that'll be cool.
Cow Club Bill, he took a drone to the face earlier this year.
Really?
Yeah. So we were filming a commercial for Liquimoly, and we were at Irwindale running the bank backwards, and we had a drone that was coming right at us doing like a chicken kind of a thing, and he said he was going to pull right over the car. He timed it just a little bit wrong and nailed the side of the car right here.
Oh, this is from a drone?
Yeah. So
could you imagine if this hit your face or something? Or
I was thinking about that,
it would
and
knock you out.
I ducked and turned my head as I saw it coming at me. And luckily, it was just a little bit further back, and it didn't. But yeah,
because I was thinking like this looked like cone damage or something.
Something big
like
and heavy.
Something big and heavy that you hit while on track, but it actually was a drone. I'm guessing the drone didn't survive.
The drone did not survive. The camera survived, and they got the shot, which is pretty awesome. But yeah, the car took a little damage. So.
All right, so we've been following all year. This car has it's like a survivor. Right, because we've been able to see, like you have some events where you go to and then you potentially have some motor issues, but it still keeps going.
Yeah.
Even if you're down a cylinder or two, right?
Yep.
Or even when your really expensive turbo motor turns into a coffee machine.
You know what? Yeah, exactly. Let me show you the piston from.
So when I say
Friday.
coffee machine, it's because it actually made lattes.
Yeah.
Or what looked like lattes.
So. Here's the piston that came out of the engine. Obviously, there's a giant chunk missing there. Looks like detonation. Melted a chunk of the piston. The cylinder walls are destroyed. And here's some other good ones in here. So this thing, the ring is cracked and turned sideways in the bore.
So what event was this?
This was Irwindale on Friday, round 7, where I ended up in second place.
And you were running, and it was like this. It looked like this.
That's the engine that came out at the end of the day. We thought a head gasket was going bad, but it turns out that it was actually splitting the block where the head studs are. So the head studs loosened up. And I think that also was because this piece came off, got smashed against the head, and kind of pushed the head apart. So the block's cracked. There's a couple pistons that are missing chunks, the rings that are broken, big scoring.
But this wasn't even the only time this year, right? What other event was it where you were just down on power, something was wrong? There was a lot of things wrong.
That was St. Louis.
Okay, so St. Louis, so 2 times this year you were running with a hurt motor, and I think both times you advanced
We did
pretty
pretty
good.
well.
Yeah, even to the point where I feel like potentially if your opponent knew something was wrong, maybe they would have been able to take advantage of it more.
Yeah.
But like I feel like you guys, you didn't even limp it either. You still pushed hard.
Yeah.
And you got as much out of it as you could, which really kind of goes to show how amazing this motor package is.
Yeah, this year, so previous years we'd run the engine for 2 seasons straight. And this year I wanted to try to get more power out of it. I knew that we were kind of near the limit, but it had lasted 2 seasons, so I was hoping to get 1 season out of it. Unfortunately, I think that the compression is just too high. We went to 12.5 to 1 with 1.6 bar boost and 150 shot of nitrous, and I think it's just more than this can handle. I think we can probably make it work with some more development, but to be safe, I think we'll just probably drop it back down to 11.5 to 1 and maybe raise the boost a little on the nitrous when we need that extra grip when we get closer to the finals, where guys obviously have faster cars like Osbo, and I had to turn the nitrous off at Irwindale to try to save the motor to keep it going. So we were probably down at about, knowing the way this is, probably around 800 horsepower.
It's such a fine line, right? Because what do you do if you just have that extra edge? maybe you'll advance further, but who knows how long the motor's going to last.
Yeah.
And then if you're lower in power, maybe you may not advance at all, and maybe you may not even have the chance to hurt the motor at all.
Yeah.
Right? So it's easy to say. I always say this to the FD guys, and I kind of feel bad for saying this, but it's only 5 battles, sir.
Yeah, I know.
That's
Yeah,
all you
it's
have
only,
to do.
Only 5 battles.
No, but realistically, 5 battles with the one more times, back to back, so much stress on this car. I think a lot of people don't understand how much these, even though it's little runtime, kind of like drag racing.
But that's a good point, right? So drag racing, we're basically building drag race engines, but running them not for 7, 8, 9 seconds. We're running them for 35 seconds, 40 seconds, on the limiter the whole time, on and off, and that's the difference, right? We're running it for 4 times as long as a drag race. So those 5 times, now it's like 30 laps of drag racing on an engine that's already like right near the limit. So it's we're putting these things through a lot.
All right, let's take a look at the build. So this is your most developed car. You've thrown all the knowledge that you've acquired over the years.
Yep.
Let's start with the engine bay, since we're talking about motors anyways.
Let me grab the hood prop and.
All right, so where do you keep getting these motors? Because you're obviously you build so many BMWs. What does the start life as?
So this engine is an E46 M3 engine. It's the S54, and I find them all over the place. eBay, Craigslist. Sometimes local guys will hit me up and say, "Hey, I've got a block or a head. Do you need some parts?" So, yeah, they're fairly available. They are starting to go up in price a little bit, but these engines are about the same price as a 2J, which I think these engines are way better than a 2J. With the dual cam control, you can make a lot of low end and mid range power, and also top end, where 2Js are pretty laggy and just like to make that top end power.
I mean, the crazy thing to me is this was originally an NA motor. Like, it was never meant to be boosted, right?
Yep.
Was there ever a car that had the S54 that had turbos?
No, not from the factory. So, but being that it's an M engine, they over-engineered everything. The head ports are awesome. The cam profiles are great. Actually, the street car NA cam works really well as kind of like a performance turbo cam, which is why nobody really makes like a turbo cam for these things yet, because the stock cams work so well. There are probably some small gains to be had there, but cost and everything involved with that. But the block, it's a cast iron block like a 2J. It's an aluminum head, like I said, really good head ports, good cam control, and they just work really well as a turbo car.
So what did this dyno at in the beginning of the year?
So it was 1,015 horsepower when it was running properly, which is about 75 to maybe 100 horsepower more than we made the previous years. And the torque was better and the response was better with the higher compression. But like I said, that's something we might have to just give up to get the engine to last, for a year.
And that's with nitrous?
That's with nitrous.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was about, I think it was right around 920 without nitrous.
Yeah, gone are the days where I specifically remember, like ASD, they're like, oh, our car makes 700 horsepower. Like 700 horsepower? How is that even usable?
Yeah.
That's like too much power. But now, if you don't have quadruple digit numbers, then don't even bother showing up.
Yeah.
Don't even bother thinking about you're going to get on the box.
Yeah.
And
it just gets crazier every year. But I also think that with a turbo car, especially a 6-cylinder turbo, you need to have that 1,000 to 1,100 horsepower, maybe even more, because that's peak power. That's not mid-range usable power, where you look at a supercharged V8 or even an NA V8 or turbo V8, and you've got all the power all the time. So maybe the peak number is 900, but you have this giant window where you're making 900 horsepower. Where with a turbo car, you've got this small area, and the power below that isn't great. So these things, I mean, it's a 3.2 liter engine that we're pushing to 1,000 horsepower at the wheels, and we've got a quick change diff, which actually takes probably another 100 horsepower out of it. So if we were put this engine in a street car or put a stock diff in it, we'd probably make 1100 plus at the wheels. That's pretty insane.
Wow. What about suspension? Just because we can see everything.
Yeah, so it's a Wise Fab. This is actually a new version Wise Fab that we've been testing this year with a different geometry, and it's working really well. And then there's the KW 3-way Motorsport shocks in there, and that's about it. It's pretty simple. BMWs, you know, they have a very simple suspension design to begin with, so you don't need a lot of links and stuff like an E92 or an S13.
Tell me about the kit.
Yeah, so this is a Street Fighter LA kit, and they designed this for us a couple years ago, and we wanted something that didn't take away from the original E46 body lines, kind of just accentuated them. So instead of going with like a box flare style, we just kind of stretched the bubble flares out a bit and made it look a little bit more aggressive.
I really love that look. I love how smooth it is, because sometimes it could get a little rough if it's like, you know, you get the rivets and but I really like this look a lot.
Yeah, and you know, some cars look good with the square type flares with cars with sharper lines, but the E46 has a really rounded bubble shape to it, so I think this just really fits the car.
Can we check out this rear radiator setup?
Yeah.
Or do you have to cut those zip ties?
No, I can just kind of flip it open.
All right, so tell me about this rear end area.
Yeah, so we've got a combination of parts here. We've got the CSF, this is their R1 triple pass radiator. Just one Spall race fan on there. The radiator works so well that we don't need to run like massive double fans on there.
This is so surprising to me that I mean, some of the setups that you see on the grid, it's like so much more airflow, so much of a bigger radiator and more fans.
Yeah.
This actually keeps it cool, huh?
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of science behind it, but basically, you know, if you get this massive core like they run in NASCAR, those only work when they're going 200 miles an hour, and there's so much velocity going through there. So if you put fans behind a really thick radiator, it's not going to pull the air through it. It's going to basically create a lot of drag and not want to move air. And all those scoops and everything that a lot of cars have, I don't know if they're really planned out and tested. You know, you'd have to do some sort of like, not necessarily wind tunnel testing, but maybe yarn and tape and see where the air is actually going, because a lot of times you have a scoop back here and the air is just going right over it, and the scoop isn't giving you any
because it's kind of like the pickup truck thing, right? The pickup truck thing is if you have basically there's like an air bubble and the air actually flows over it.
Yes, science.
Yeah, you've got a low pressure spot through that area and it doesn't help at all. But you got this, maybe it's disturbing the air more, maybe when it gets in here it's like tumbling and spilling out. So I just rely on the fan to pull the air through, and it does a great job. You know, it's obviously the CSF radiators and their coolers work really well, especially in this application. And then we've got an electric water pump back there, radium swirl pot, and some other radium hoses and bits and some HPS silicone stuff. So not an overly complex system, but you know, simple sometimes just works better.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thing is you guys are pushing these so much. The last thing you want to do is waste your 5 minutes on something stupid.
Yeah.
You know, your competition timeout. You want to save those for when it's like a big deal. You have to actually change an arm or whatever, fix your toe or whatever, versus like you want to try to just keep everything as simple as possible. So it just, for durability's sake. I mean, how did this get hit?
Yeah, right. So the quarter panels are all fiberglass. So these things actually can completely flex over here and pretty much pop back out.
Like how many taillights did you go through?
None.
Really?
Yeah. So this is the same taillight that's been on the car all year long. This is the same taillight we were rubbing the wall with at Irwindale. But that's not saying that I'm only going this deep and just touching it. These quarter panels flex, the zip ties pop, and they pop in and out.
Right.
And it keeps everything pretty nice.
And like, you didn't have to change this year?
We did actually. This is the second one, but you know, the way I've designed it, it's kind of far away, so the quarter panels can move in quite a bit before it actually makes contact with that with that metal bar.
It's interesting because I'm so lucky that I get to kind of get a close-up look at so many drift cars, pro and amateur, and the ones that are more for style, right? But also the really functional ones. Like this, it's both, which I really like. You want to talk about like so dumb that it's like, why didn't I think of that kind of thing? This is so cool. I haven't really seen it on that many other cars in the grid.
I've been doing it for years now, and I honestly can't say that I'm the first one. I don't remember if I maybe saw it somewhere else, but I don't need to know how much fuel is in the car. Right? We're in the pits every 2 laps, and the important thing is that my guys that are filling the car know how much fuel is in it, so they don't spill. So fuel gauge that is lit up at night. They open the cap, they pour the fuel in, right where they're pouring the fuel in, they can see the gauge, they can watch everything, and so it just makes it really fast and easy. I'm not on the radio telling them that the car's full, watching the the gauge on the dash.
Yeah.
But it's all the little details.
That
right?
makes so much sense. And so much of this is just stuff that I'm sure you just learn over the years. Can we take a look at the inside if you can go that side?
Yeah.
All right, here's a first for something that I've never seen in a Formula Drift car. This is something that you see in sports car racing.
Yep.
But I've never seen this in an FD car. So this is just supplies fresh air, or what does this do?
Yeah, so I've got a blower back here, like a Parker pumper with a filter on it, and I've got a scoop coming in from the roof to get, it's pretty much smoky everywhere on the track, but on the top of the car in the middle of the roof is about the least smokiest. So we pull some fresh air in from there through that Parker pumper, and I don't like having a hose connected to my helmet. The way it feels when you're moving your head around in the car just kind of bugs me, but I really like to have that air blowing. So yeah, this works really well, and it's pretty inexpensive. I think it's a $150 or $200 pump.
Plus, it's another thing to disconnect if you have to get out
you have to jump
quickly.
Out of the car. Yep.
And we've seen so many times this year people catching on fire, unfortunately, and they run away from the car and they're still connected. Their mic is still connected. Yeah. And then they just get snagged, or like almost like ragdolled by their stupid microphone.
Yeah, or cool suit hoses or something.
Yeah, it's always something. But this is pretty cool. It's just like a neat little thing for comfort, and that's a really big deal when you're sitting in the car for so long.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the 2 back-to-back runs that's the real problem. It's when we're in practice and we're basically sitting in a car for an hour and a half straight, where you're just back in line. You do a run and then you're back in line, and you're just like, in the middle of summer in Texas, and it's 110 degrees outside, and you're dying in the car. That makes a huge difference.
So tell us a little bit about the inside. Cut up stock dash.
Yeah. So trimmed up stock dash, which works pretty well because we've got the original airbag area that you can just pop off, and access to some of the relays and wiring. It's got a PDM, so we don't have a bunch of relays, but a relay for the nitrous, and a fuse there for that. And in the center we've got the keypad for the Motec PDM. So basically everything is operated through there. And then a C125 Motec dash. They're just clean, simple. They always work well. And I try to keep everything in the build of a car as simple as possible. And it just makes it, when you're sitting in the car, everything feels nice and clean and airy. And when you're working on the car, it's easy to work on, and you can find problems quickly if you do have problems.
Yeah, so it's just so simple. There's just not that many dials or switches. I mean, just looking at it quickly, I can pretty much figure out all the things that to operate this thing, right? A huge start button.
That actually is a camera record button.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I have a little camera. So I put a big button there so I remember to turn it on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. And the ignition's right there, though.
Yeah,
okay,
ignition and starter is all there.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I like that.
This is the control for the cool suit, so you can control the speed of the water, control for the Parker pumper, and then a switch is the 2 speeds for the wipers. So the wipers are controlled up here, but that's the high and low, and then a nitrous purge, and then you got the brake bias.
And you built the cage yourself here?
Yeah, actually, so we built the cage in-house, and myself and Nate Ha, who owns Bink Industries, he worked for me for a little while, and he helped me build the car, so he's a really good fabricator. But yeah, I mean, I do TIG welding and cages and stuff myself as well.
This is so clean. Like also, this is pretty interesting. I guess it just gives you a little more room, or
yeah, a little more head clearance. I mean, trying to follow the factory lines of the roof, and we've got this bar that's actually moved. Usually you'd put it in this joint here, but when I sat in the car, my helmet was just too close. So pushed this over and then added this tube that lines up with the gussets, so to keep all the strength there, but still give a little more head clearance.
Right. So pretty soon, this is all Irwindale damage, Irwindale grease, dust,
Yep.
Tire particles.
Yeah.
Pretty soon, you're gonna have to do a full strip on this thing.
Yep.
And that's what you do every single off season.
Yeah, we'll basically tear the whole car down. The engine that we actually put in this car, so after Friday night at Irwindale, brought the car back to the shop. Saturday we put the old engine in, which has about 20 events on it, and it's got a lot of blow by, and it's not doing great, but it held together for us on Sunday. So we need to rebuild that engine as a spare, build a new engine as the main engine for next year, and then we'll go through everything. We'll disassemble the entire car, check everything from the gearbox to the U-joints on the drive shaft, all the wires, make sure there's nothing chafing, make sure all the connectors are still good, change all the brake master cylinders, change everything that's like a wear item. We'll put new parts on. It does cost a lot of money to do that, but if you go out to the Formula D event and you're running in pro and you have a brake master cylinder or a clutch master cylinder go bad in the middle of a run and it's competition, you're done. Your weekend's over. So all those little details just make a reliable car that you can have a shot at moving on.
That's a really good point, and that's something that's different from traditional motorsport. Like, let's say if you're running a 24-hour race in a traditional motorsport, potentially if you're last place, you're still driving the whole time.
Yep.
Right? You can finish the race, but you're just last place.
Yep.
Who cares? But with drifting, if you get knocked out in top 32, it's like, man,
you're done.
It's like, what a waste.
Yeah.
It's too bad that you spent all this effort to get in, and then you got booted from a mechanical, versus an actual battle.
Yeah.
So yeah, you definitely want to avoid that.
Yeah, exactly. That's the worst way to go out, is to have something fail, and especially when it's just a simple cheap part, which usually ends up being what causes the failure is something that was just either not put together properly or not serviced properly, or just something failing.
Well, let's see. Is there anything we are missing? Can you think? You want to talk about the brake setup and the wheel
Yeah.
package, wheel and tire
Yeah.
package? So you're running Enkei wheels. We love Enkei. They are great wheels, and I run them on my Supra also.
Yeah.
But this is an insane wheel and tire and brake package. This is completely different from, I feel like, the traditional drift car.
I think it's getting more and more common now. Before it used to be like stock brakes or small little tiny like brakes and calipers, but the more grip we put in the cars, the more speed that we have, and you can get a small caliper with a small rotor to lock up, but you don't have this modulation, right? So you can't drag the brakes slightly. You don't have much control. With a big brake kit like these Spartas, they're really lightweight, so they're billet aluminum, all machined out. There's like pockets cut in them, so we're not taking a huge weight penalty for having a 6-piston caliper and a big rotor. But when you get stuck behind somebody that's spinning and you can stop the car before you crash into them and save your car, that's obviously huge. And in the battles, we have so much grip in these cars, you need to be ready on the brakes, like with your left foot the whole time, to make adjustments as you're kind of charging towards somebody, and having a brake rotor and brake pads and a caliper that you can control properly and not lock the brakes up, but slow the car down just the amount you need to, is really important. So that makes a huge difference, I think, especially for the way I drive. I like to be very smooth in the car and not so choppy. And then also in the rear, we only run one caliper,
Oh, that's different too. So,
Yeah.
so just to finish up on the front, I remember when Daigo Saito brought his SC, the brakes on the front were so tiny, and I feel like they weren't even vented.
Yeah.
And they were like the ones that were like,
Yeah, the wavy ones.
yeah, they're wavy,
Yeah.
so it's like for design. And on top of that, it was basically the size of your hat.
Yeah.
Like it was so small.
Yep.
I couldn't even believe that that thing could stop.
Yeah, that's it though, right? It's like you can get enough pressure to lock it up with a really aggressive pad, but you don't have that like, all right, I'm going to start to slow down now and have more pedal travel and have basically the ability to modulate, which, you know, I drive road race cars, and that's kind of where I came from. I like that. I don't like the brakes that are like nothing locked up. So.
And then, so in terms of your rear setup, most of the cars on the grid have 2 calipers.
Yeah, exactly. So we're actually running an inline. So it goes through the brake master and then through the e-brake master and then to a caliper. So it's not like the caliper is separated into 2 halves. It's just a 4-piston caliper. It does not work well in a street car with a regular master cylinder because you have a lot of travel. But with this brake setup with a dual master cylinder and running big masters, you have a really stiff pedal. So the feedback that you get in the foot pedal from the e-brake is really minimal, and it doesn't bother me. So, but I have had it on other cars. My FC, before I went into FD, I had a pass through, and it was terrible because I had a stock master cylinder in that car. But with the right part combination, you can make it work. And that's another thing. It just saves complexity and saves weight. So.
Right. Interesting. Oh, that's cool. Well, thank you so much for showing us this build. It's taken all year. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
But
it's still in one piece.
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not on a forklift or anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a good weekend for you at Irwindale, you know, even though you had mechanical failures.
Yep.
But the point is getting on the box, and I don't know, just, I guess it's been a tough year for everybody, you know, to be able to race at all, to be able to attend races, photograph races, or just be part of car culture. A big deal, really a big deal. And I'm very glad that we were able to have something like Formula Drift as a platform to kind of still promote car culture and promote racing, and just a little bit of inspiration, I guess.
Yeah, and just something to kind of like take our minds off of everything that's happening, you know, with the virus and all that stuff and the economy, and to be able to go out to the events and put on a show and have, you know, unfortunately most of the events we didn't have spectators, but they were able to watch us online and still, you know, with social media and everything, still have that contact there. That was great, and, you know, props to FD for putting it all together, and FCP Euro and Liqui for supporting me this year. That's been obviously crazy, and not able to do nearly as much as we wanted to do as far as, you know, creating content and all that, but they want to just do bigger and better things, so we're looking forward to the future.
Yeah, well, let's push hard again for Formula Drift 2021, and yeah, we'll see you at the events.